in Plato. The word idea is Greek, and literally, that's a Greek word. Literally, it means to behold. That's what it really means, to behold. So therefore, the idea of the good is an expression that's reserved for when you want to talk about beholding the nature of the good. Not the good itself, but when you want to behold the nature of the good. Now, when you talk about the idea of the good or beholding the idea of the good, that is nothing other than the word being. That's another word for it. That's another word for it. The idea of the good is to behold the good, and when you behold the good, it is experienced as the most brilliant light of being. That's what it's called. The idea of the good is called the most brilliant light of being. Being, therefore, is encountered as a experience of luminosity, of radiance, and that's one of the, of course, very high states all mystics seek and desire to experience. Some people get it spontaneously. Right? Therefore, going back, what's the idea of the good? To behold the good. If you behold the good, what do you have? An experience of the most brilliant light of being. That's called luminosity, divine radiance, and that's an ultimate experience, peak experience. Therefore, you know what we have to do? We have to consider whatever study we're going to be engaged in, we want to see if it facilitates the apprehension of that experience. That's our goal. Now, if it does so, we're going to study it. If not, not. Why? Because we want to find a way in which we can dwell in the most blessed part of reality. When this is experienced, it is experienced as the most blessed part of reality. It is experienced as bliss, joy, wonder, delight. What's it like? Divine luminosity and radiance. Therefore, this study, what we're after, we're only interested in it for one purpose, so that we can turn the soul around. Why? So that we can dwell there in the most blessed part of reality, and that is to contemplate being. There's a new word we're sneaking in called essence. Just as I held back from the word being, I'm going to deal with that word later. All right? Now look here. What we're talking about, obviously, is not geometry. Would you agree? Is that right? I mean, that's the way he defines geometry. Every quote here is from Plato. And therefore he says, this way of talking is in direct contradiction with the language employed by its adepts, its geometrical teachers. See? It's in direct contradiction to it. What does he mean, therefore, by geometry? It is the knowledge of what eternally exists. What's its goal? It must compel the soul to contemplate, same word, essence. And to the degree that it does that, it is suitable for one of our studies. If we use it to contemplate anything that comes into being, comes into existence, it's not. That's all he says about geometry. Does it look like geometry? If you were teaching a course in geometry, isn't this the way you teach it? Strange, is it not? Now, wait a minute. It's going to get worse. He then talks about another study. And all I'm doing is taking the key quotes from each one of these sections, put them on the sheets, let you see them. Now, one of the goals of this strange study of geometry I need to use right now, he says, is that in the study of arithmetic, we must learn to do one thing, to distinguish between 1, 2, and 3. I mean, what's so difficult about distinguishing between 1, 2, and 3? Now, what's interesting about Plato is that the effort you go through to understand it is itself the very process of exercising the understanding. His goal is to awaken the understanding, because understanding in this way prepares you for this experience. That's the whole goal. What is it again? The book itself is designed in such a way that when you focus on it and put your mind to mastering it, the very steps you're going to go through to master it is going to be the exercise of the understanding, which is the very faculty and the very thing he insists is the central purpose of his philosophy. Why? Because it prepares the soul for a vision. Now, that's why I'm going back to this. 1, 2, and 3. Every time Plato has a problem in any dialogue, especially the Republic, you can turn it into the Republic and look for its solution in terms of the Republic itself as an example within the book itself. Clever? So therefore, if he says, look here, we must discover this distinction between 1, 2, and 3, you and I are going to say, well, that's obvious. Unless he himself has some trouble distinguishing 1, 2, and 3. If he does, would we not want to know what kind of problem emerges when he has trouble distinguishing 1, 2, and 3 right in the Republic? Because if he says it's essential to understand the distinction between 1, 2, and 3, and he goofs himself and can't count 1, 2, and 3, would we not want to study that and see what he means?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And how he resolves it.
How he resolves it. Okay, good. Next, here we go. Now, I'm not going to tell you what study this is. But the way he starts is this. He says, after geometry, we must study astronomy. And they go on talking about astronomy for a few minutes, and then Socrates says, oh, I think I made a mistake. I made a mistake. Astronomy doesn't follow geometry. I have to go back and correct myself. I wasn't making a distinction that I should have made. 1, 2, 3. Therefore, what does this allow us? 1, 2, 3. That means these studies just don't appear in any order, because he wouldn't have made a mistake if the order doesn't matter. If it does matter in what order they're taking, to distinguish between 1, 2, and 3 is the notion that you have to approach these studies hierarchically and put one higher than the other. If that weren't the case, he would never have admitted he made a mistake. There'd be no point in making a mistake or admitting he made a mistake. Therefore, by correcting it, he tells us the significance of ordering these in a hierarchical way. Oh, that's an interesting sideline. Okay. There's a charmed art he has. Now, let me look at this. They're very interesting. Charmed art. He said, if we could only get this art to be supervised by the city, we said everything would change. But right now, there's no honor for this study, even though it's a charmed art. But if we could get a supervisor, and if we could get it honored, and if the advice of this art were taken, then the whole society would change in a very significant way. But right now, there's no honor given to it because it's seen as too difficult. You need a teacher or a director. And right now, the seekers are too arrogant to submit to the discipline required. Biggest problem in bringing out this charmed art is that the people are ignorant of the reasons for its pursuit. And so long as they're ignorant of the reasons for its pursuit, they're never going to study it. He said, therefore, we must talk about the nature of this charmed art. Left out a letter. Which one?